So the aim of today's podcast is to discuss the key question: should women train or approach their health and fitness differently to men? What's the initial verdict?
For me, I would say 99% of it is going to be exactly the same. And although I'm sure we'll dive into some of the things you can take into consideration if you're ticking all of the big boxes, if people take anything away from this, I think it should be that the majority of the training is going to be exactly the same. Good form, high levels of effort are still going to be the most important thing for making progress, regardless of your gender.
Yes, I am 100% agreeing with that. And yeah, all the nuances and differences that we're going to discuss today are simply just that, and they are things that you can apply. But if you are putting those things before the big picture things, what Ed just talked about, such as effort level, consistency, sticking to your nutrition, doing all the right things, then it's not going to make a difference. Even optimizing the menstrual cycle period as well, stuff, that's all literally icing on the cherry on the icing on the cake.
So if we start off with training, we've got the core principles of progressive overload, perfect form, pick exercises that work well for you. These ones work across the board, whether you're male or female. So for that, in that respect, everything is the same. There are some nuances that we're going to discuss, but just to caveat again that these are this is the cherry, and if you haven't got those core principles in place, it's not going to matter too much. What you will find if you are female and potentially you're a client of ours, some of these things may have just been subtly done into your training program without realizing, because it's not something you look at and think, oh, this is a program for women. But when we look at it, there's certain things we do which make very subtle differences. And if all the principles are in place, they can make a difference. So let's kick off with training. There's so we've got volume, intensity, frequency, body parts. Which one should we kick it off with?
Okay, intensity.
Yeah.
Intensity.
Go on.
Yeah. So I think probably one of the most, if there is going to be like a distinct difference, it's going to be the intensity that women should potentially stick with if they want to make progressive gains over the long term. There is research showing that men do seem to be more explosive and more strength orientated in general on average. So if you were to take a bunch of untrained men and a bunch of untrained women, on average, the men would be able to work at a higher intensity, be able to generate more force for like the lower rep ranges. So they can actually benefit from those lower rep ranges more so than women. But as is seen with like elite athletes, with women who are like sprinters and pole vaulters and just weightlifters in general, like if they train like that for a long enough period of time, those differences pretty much mellow out. Like they literally become zero. But in general, for the Gen Pop woman, they are going to be better off working in an intensity range that is more between the say 8 to 12 or 12 and above rep range, in comparison to men who could potentially benefit from say the 6 to 8 rep range, because they can generate enough explosiveness and intensity to actually get something out of those lower rep ranges, whereas women do seem to be better at endurance-based things and being able to accumulate a lot of volume with lower weight but for higher repetitions. So that's why naturally you will see higher rep ranges allocated to females in general.
That's why when you see like a female doing, let's say 90% on their squat, a guy would get maybe 2 to 3 reps. A woman would get like 5-6 reps with 90% on their bar. But if you add, say 10, if you think, oh, they must have loads, they can probably increase the weight loads. You add say 10% on the bar and they don't get anything, or they might get 1 or 2, one if that. And it all comes down to that fiber type makeup. And they should use it to their advantage by pushing up the rep ranges a little bit more and really maximizing, trying to hit PRs in higher rep brackets, as opposed to chasing sort of 4 to 6 rep range, maybe lower, that guys may do better off with.
Oh, for sure. And they can still get a fantastic training response. They can still grow muscle if that's the goal. And we all know that muscle growth can happen across the spectrum of rep ranges. So they don't need to work in that really, really heavy low rep range unless they do want to improve their strength, which will happen over time, as I mentioned earlier. But yeah, there's just no real need for it. You can still get the benefits of your hypertrophy training with just going, 8 and above, 10 and above. and taking those sets, you know, what Ed said earlier, as long as there's good effort levels there, as long as you're accumulating a good amount of volume, then yeah, you're going to be fine. I think, you know, Ed, if you want to speak about the next part of the whole trifecta of training, which is the volume side of things. So I think that'll tie in quite nicely.
Just before you do, the one caveat there is don't take this to the extreme and start doing 50 rep dumbbells with the pink. Don't do 50 rep sets with the pink dumbbells.
That's cardio.
Yeah, exactly. That's the Jane Fonda stuff isn't going to work.
And also, although we're talking about difference in gender, this is something that can happen across all different individuals.
100%.
I know when we've talked, Ivan, you said you're much better in those higher rep ranges. So let's say maybe me and Ivan were both training together. He might smoke me with, like, say we both had 80% of our max on the bar. He might get double the reps I could. But I personally actually do a bit better in like the 5 to 7 kind of rep range. Whereas if Ivan gets a bit more of a drop off there, then I maybe, you know, be able to outperform him relative there. And so as much as it's difference between genders, this is something that we can all just take into account. But that's going to be like a stereotypical change. But I also
super blanket statements on there.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I also think, as much as what you said, Ivan, about there being actual physiological differences with the muscle fiber makeups, I always wonder as well how much of it is just psychological in the gym as well. Because I think, you know, when so many Gen Pop ladies start training, it's very common to not be that confident or comfortable with lifting heavy or pushing hard, and so they might be comfortable pushing hard for like the 12 to 15 rep range, but then as it starts to go into lower reps and the weights are therefore heavier, whether some of that's just them not feeling like that's what they should be doing or that's what they've done before, whereas maybe for men it's more often thought of, oh, I should be lifting heavyweight. Although there is physical changes, the way you say, there's clearly the difference gets smaller as you look up, you know, more and more advanced athletes. Is that just them getting more comfortable in that environment as well, potentially?
I think that's a big part. I think there's still a big stigma around women training with weights in general, let alone women training heavy, which is something that definitely needs to go, which I'm sure we'll just hopefully do our best to dismantle throughout this podcast. But yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it can be very psychological and socially ingrained because, yeah, as I said, those elite athletes are perfect examples of women that have committed their life to becoming stronger, faster, bigger, and they all make the transition eventually. It takes a while, but it still happens, you know.
Yeah, and on that note, it all comes down to the ego, doesn't it? Male ego in the gym is one of the reasons why they think they should lift heavy, whereas females typically have no ego in the gym. They come in and they have no desire to want to prove that they can lift super heavy, and that can often be, sometimes it pulls them away from lifting heavy, but it's also why they'll always err on the side of better form and have a lot more in the tank than they think they have. So
and they get injured a lot less.
Yeah, because they don't do the stupid stuff that we do.
I think it's finding that balancing point, isn't it? Because I think a level of ego is good. I think I use that anyway when I go into a big set, but it's making sure it doesn't tip over to that stupidity or like putting yourself.
I think it's ego is confidence, that you're trying to give yourself confidence to lift that weight.
Yeah,
an ego lifter is someone who puts weight on the bar that they can't even, they shouldn't even be lifting. If that makes sense. You're doing stuff like that. You're like, okay, I'm going to compromise everything just to lift this weight on my back.
Yeah, and I think that's where the tipping point needs to be, isn't it? Where you fall on that scale. It needs to be, within reality. But then when you do approach whatever you do, as long as it's a realistic set for you, it's just going in with confidence and not being scared to give it your all. But I think what you were then moving on to in terms of volume, Ivan, was because of the differences in muscle fiber being more predominantly slow twitch, women are able to recover a lot faster than men, which means that overall they can handle a lot greater training volume. So if although the majority of a program might be exactly the same, it may just be that there's more sets in a female's program, as well as potentially having some smaller rest periods within there as well.
You think there's often said around that, and just to come back to the point of equalizing all variables, do you think if a woman had the same level of muscle mass and the same level of strength levels, would they still have shorter rest periods?
Yes.
Even with muscle mass and strength expression equalized.
It's more of the fiber type, the distribution that would be, and also there is a hormonal profile of females does seem to lend to recovery better, but it does also seem to lend less to being able to generate force explosively quickly, which again, that's the stuff that really tanks us. We've all been there when we're doing like this really, really heavy grinders. It's that explosive, really, really heavy stuff that seems to fry our nervous system tremendously. And the reason that they can recover a lot quicker is because on average, they can't generate that same level of intensity. And again, that's why their recovery capacity is going to be a lot better because of those sort of variables. They don't have, it's probably the wrong wording, but on average, they're not going to be able to just hit that top threshold as much as a male could.
The recruitment muscle fibers you're talking about.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, effort level will still feel the same, but yeah.
Exactly. Effort levels in the burn and taking a set for failure still feels the same. And this is, we've all seen us push females in the gym, 20 rep leg presses. They're like dying and they cannot literally get another rep in. They're done. They hit failure. A minute later, back on there, Yeah. But if we did that, we would literally be out for like 5-6 minutes.
Yeah.
More.
I think
be able to do another set.
I think going on what you said there, Akash, though, it is really interesting. And it could probably say it for all of these points, because if you controlled for all the other variables in terms of like amount of muscle mass and like making sure they were pushing hard and things, I think these physiological differences will get even smaller, and we'd really actually be able to see, like, if you just had a male and female twin, never let them out to the real world, so they never had like these social biases and things, and you just put them in a gym, you'd actually be able to see then what the physiological difference is. Because if a woman isn't pushing as hard or going as heavy because she doesn't feel as comfortable in the gym, she's then going to recover quicker just because she's not working as hard. And so there's so many factors that I think actually can influence these things when in reality as well.
That's true. The recruitment thing's interesting because that explains why they typically need more volume as well, because they need more volume to be able to stimulate, let's say 100% of muscle fibers in that session.
Yes. So that's sort of how, again, these are averages. I've seen many strong females that go against all that. So again, this is just speaking in averages. Got to keep saying it.
Yeah. There's always a couple of women in the gym who make you think twice when you look at their weight they're deadlifting or something, right?
Yeah, they just go, "Oh, you're on gear."
Well, I had a woman. This is when gyms were open last year, and she came up to me. She goes, "Can I borrow your chalk?" And I thought, "Okay, yeah, sure." And then I just gave her the chalk, and then I didn't think anything of it. And then she came back again. And I thought, okay, well, she's obviously quite serious, and because not many people take chalk to the gym, right? And I glanced over. I think she was pulling like 145 for reps, just quite casually as well, multiple sets as well. And I was like, oh, good job I was on off body day today.
Yeah.
And it's impressive. Like,
so impressive. Yeah.
I think that's when you get those women expressing that level of strength, it's because they've knocked a lot of the psychological barriers down as well. And they really take themselves to that place.
I used to work in a gym which was pretty big on CrossFit. Like, there was a big CrossFit community within there. And I think that's where I've seen the most like really impressive female kind of lifters within like so many within such small space. And I think it's what you said. It's just that community, because they've knocked down all of these social norms or barriers. Like, it's not weird for a woman to lift heavy, to grunt, to spit a bit when she's, I don't know, pulling a really hard deadlift. Like, men and women, CrossFit have done a really good job in equalizing men and women, at least from my perception. And it was really good to see women be so empowered on such an equal level. And I think that is literally, it took the shackles off and it allowed them just to actually reach their potential without having to, worry about how they were looking or anything like that.
Yeah, CrossFit women are very impressive. Some of the top athletes, but even just on a local basis, if you go to a local CrossFit gym, you see very impressive women. Similar to powerlifting gyms, you go to a powerlifting, there'll always be a couple of women there who lift very, very impressively, and they're very timid in terms of size. They're not bulky women. This is the other thing to caveat. They're not bulky women.
Say that. Yeah,
they're slender. They're toned. They're all the words that you want to hear that we hear about. They're very, very defined and strong looking, but they're not bulky in any sense. I remember seeing a woman at a local powerlifting gym. She thinks she weighed like 45 kilos and she was squatting 120, 130 or something like that. And she's deadlifting like 150. It's something crazy, like triple body weight. But she looked just like, she just she didn't look like bulky in any aspect. She didn't have she didn't have peaks on her biceps or anything that you associate with what you think will happen when you start doing all these things. She looked great.
So impressive. Yeah. It shows that like that love for training as well, for her to just pursue that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's just that for her to stay that size too, and to be able to get those numbers. That's just a lot of practice. That's incredible, like neural drive. You know what I mean? That to generate that, that's insane when you think about it. Like,
I remember when she'd lift and she'd like grind these 1RMs out, but the thing is, like after like 80%, everything looked like a grind to her, and I'm thinking she can't go heavier than that. And then she put more weight on the bar and think, actually, no way she's going to lift that, and they just keep going up and up and up. So it's very impressive, like that ability to express the strength and recruit. That's someone who can recruit really, really well.
But what is so good about those situations and those environments like powerlifting or like CrossFit or anything is the focus is shifted from aesthetics onto performance.
Yeah. And
I think when you shift your training, this is for men as well, when you shift your focus onto performance and it's beating the logbook or it's just perfecting the skill. I've seen this a lot with weightlifting gyms as well. Where you get this, it's like the love for the training itself and not just the after product of it, and just really wanting to perform. Then as a product of that, you are stimulating your body to then adapt as you want. But when you're constantly chasing, just looking better the whole time, that's where people end up doing like little frog pump things for like 50 reps. And you know what I mean? You're chasing like a pump in your glutes the whole session. Whereas in reality, if you just say you went to this powerlifting place, you got really strong with your deadlift, your bum's probably going to look a lot better in 6 months' time than what you're currently doing.
The physique's a byproduct.
There's still a lot of them, and that's a good point you made, because before there used to be the whole Jane Fonda pink dumbbells, pump, train for the burn. But now I think what's happening at the moment is exactly that: the chasing for the pump in the glutes, chasing the pump in the shoulders to get your V taper. But
it's a new shiny object.
Yeah, it's like the 50 rep frog pumps and all these sorts of things where you feel a nice burn. But the reality is it's not going to change your physique, and you won't be able to maximize the real benefits of this. That's taking extra volume to a pointless level. And it's like with guys who just pump their biceps for an hour. It's the same thing. It's just feels nice for a bit, and then after you've had a shower and you got home, you've forgotten what it's all about.
I wish I could just have the pump forever. You heard that one?
I actually heard one time two like young guys, probably kind of same stuff we used to say to our mates when we were like 16, 17 in the gym, like, just starting to get into it. And one of them said, I wish this pump could last like when I got home. And one of his mates went, the longer you go, the longer the pump lasts. That's how your muscles are bigger. They just stay pumped all the time. And I was thinking like, that's probably smarter than what I was saying at their age, to be honest.
So we've got volume, we've done less rest periods, we've talked intensity, frequency.
Yeah, well, I would say frequency would tie into volume. So if you don't have the same rate of explosiveness, you can recover from your sessions a lot quicker, meaning that you can, again, increase your frequency. So you can hit multiple body parts multiple times per week. It's a fantastic benefit for females. I think this is why females, again, can tolerate higher training frequencies, which also go hand in hand with high volumes. So I think that's definitely another huge benefit there. So
it's funny that one sort of characteristic ties into all of them, doesn't it? The volume, intensity,
pretty much.
That recruitment of muscle fiber.
Yeah. Well, like think of like the strongest lifters that we all know. Can they train 7 days a week, or like with that intensity? Like if you were to have to, Pilko, you would be, how many of JP's guys train more than what's their sort of training frequency like? I would say maybe 4 to 5.
Yeah, I think most of them sits around 4ish, probably. Yeah, I think if you look like Dorian Yates, supposed to be one of the most, one of the hardest training bodybuilders of history.
4 days a week.
Yeah, he was on 4 days a week, and then you look down the other end of the scale, the guys who are just doing more pump-based kind of training, they're able to do like 6 a week, or some of them are doing. Arnold
when they get
double a day.
Super advanced as well. They train their body parts less frequency. So I think Dorian started off with like upper lower 4 days a week. Then he went upper lower 3 days a week on a rotation for a long period of time. Then he did a 3-way split, and then towards the end, I think he was just doing everything once a week. That's the absolute extreme. I've recently cut my training down from 5 to 4, and I've noticed the improvement. I always find like I always go through these phases where like I'm going to train 5 days a week, so I can keep Monday to Friday exactly the same. And then I always end up coming back to 4 days. And then that extra day, if I want to do it, it just ends up being like cardio.
I use cardio for that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously cardio has great health benefits, as well as I think performance benefits. But I think it's also can just be a good way of just keeping you in that routine, especially like we work from home all the time.
Yeah.
It can be good just to have something, just that slot that you normally would train if you just go and do some light cardio or something.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important. That's probably what we all look for. But again, the reason I train every day as well is because of that same reason, just keeping that structure and routine. But because of the stuff that I do, there's also a big skill component. So I can always work on a skill if I'm sort of resting. I can't go hard every single day, otherwise I'm completely fried. But there's always something that I can be working on. And, frequency blends well with learning a movement really well. The more you can do a movement across the week, the quicker you're going to learn it, the better, the more efficient you're going to get. So again, frequency, if a female is wanting to develop a better motor pattern for a certain exercise, for a certain lift, higher frequencies can definitely help with that too. But yeah, if you can't just smash yourself 7 days a week and expect to make any sort of gains. So.
Absolutely. So let's discuss focus areas. So if you've nailed all these basics, now we're talking real nuances. Guys are going to like training their chest, traps. They're going to want thick VMOs, whereas women probably aren't. And I'd say this is only when you've kind of gone past the beginner stages of training, and you may want to start looking at what exercise you're training and what exercise you aren't training. Let's discuss a bit more about focal points, if at all.
I think there are the classic ones, like what you kind of said with men and then women. But I think it's a good thing for anyone listening just to realize, like, if you want to focus on something and that you want to look a certain different way, then do it. Like, if you're a woman, you want bigger quads, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want a woman to have massive biceps, like, if you want that, there's nothing wrong with it. Same way with a guy. If you don't care about your upper body, but you want big glutes, like, knock yourself out. There's no rules here. But I think, like, as I guess most people want. I think for women, from the women I work with anyway, glutes are always a big priority. Delts often are a focus as well, because I think, as you touched on earlier, actually can create that illusion of a bit more of a V taper and a smaller waist. And then lats can also help with that as well. So that'd be the most common kind of areas to prioritize a little more once you've gone beyond that beginner stage. I think, if you guys agree with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I agree 100% with the notion of you should train what you want to develop, not what society thinks that you should develop. If you want massive calves, you want massive forearms, go for it. You know what I mean? That's the beautiful thing about muscle. You can, if you specialize in it and if you focus on it, it can grow, which is brilliant. And I don't think anyone should tell you what you need to develop. You should want to come up with that yourself. And if you want to sculpt your body in a certain way, that is 100% up to you. That goes for males and females, by the way. So I never tease the guys who don't train legs at the gym, who have these huge upper bodies. Well, that's what they want to do. Fantastic. That's your agenda. That I'm not going to tease you for it. Whatever. That's your thing. And the same can be said for the opposite. I've seen the opposite happen as well. Guys with like massive legs and like no upper body. It's just like, okay, what's going on there?
I used to never train upper body for a while, because I did like prioritize mainly Olympic lifting for a while. And so I was doing that 5 days a week. And so apart from like the odd session where I'd be like, oh, just throw some curls in, or just a little pump. For a couple of years, I just basically did like maybe a bit of bench here and there once a week or something, but didn't really do any upper body for a while. And I mean, it didn't really look like I touched a weight at all. But that's not necessarily why everyone's lifting. So it's like you said, it's
exactly
just what you're on out there, isn't it?
Exactly. And then you can see it's very easy for you to fall in like your own little elitist thing, being like, oh, they don't do Olympic lifts.
Yeah.
They're inferior. They don't have the technical capacity to do my Olympic lifting. It's like, well, they don't care for Olympic lifting,
Yeah.
Like everyone has their own goals, and it's really interesting just to see. And this is when focusing on just you and focusing on what your goals are is always going to be just the best thing you can do. I know we always talk about it. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but you never know what someone's goals are. Like we all know that one person who never trains calves and they have the most ridiculous calves, right? But they don't care. They're like, oh yeah, whatever. It literally means nothing to them. But they're chasing like, say, bigger shoulders or bigger back or whatever it is, and they'll always be wanting what someone else has, but they'll never appreciate what they have.
So funny enough,
we all do this.
I spent years trying to build my calves, and I got crap calves, and I spent years trying to do it because I thought, if you don't have 18-inch calves, you're not a worthy. So I was trying everything, man. I tried, all the different things. But then I realized that I don't actually enjoy it, and I really hate it. And now I've not given up on it, but I just don't do it. Like I've got crap calves, but I'm okay with it now. I've completely. I went through a period where I'm like, I don't want to be embarrassed. Don't want to be caught wearing shorts because people are gonna think, oh, they're gonna think, oh, this guy doesn't train his calves. But now I'm just like, I don't care.
That's your own version of reality that you as well. Like no one cares, man. Yeah. And the ones that do care, it's just like, okay, you're a bit weird. Yeah. Thanks.
When that girl came up to you in the gym, you're probably like, oh, she's going to ask me about my calves. She's like, do you have any chalk? You're like, oh, yeah.
When I stopped caring about the calves, that was actually, because now, even in lockdown, I don't think I've done one calf raise. I think when I go to the gym, I do it just because I'm thinking in myself, I'm like, it's probably good to have some strength in the calves. Just for
I think it's good to train
the
plantar flexion and dorsiflexion for sure. Yeah,
and I thought, okay, I'll do that once a week just to tick that off the list. I'm feeling strong in my leg training, but from an aesthetic point of view, I'm just like, I can't be. I know it can probably be done, but I'm not willing to put in what it needs to be done for it.
Yeah, and I think that what you just said there is a fantastic tip for anyone to take into consideration as well. Like, and this is why people can't stick with things in general, because the benefit does not, for them in their brain, the benefit doesn't outweigh the work or the potential cons. That's literally how we decide everything, right? But if you really wanted to grow your back, or if you really wanted to grow a certain body part, you will do crazy things to try to make it happen. Because
I mean, when it came to like building my legs up,
worth it.
Oh, when it came to building my legs up, I was doing I'd take myself to hell and back to try and build them, like everything. But then I'd just tack on the calves at the end and be like, I'm done with it. But when it came to quads and hams, I'm like, I need to build them up.
But that was like a deep, I need to build them up. You know what I mean? For you, not for anyone else.
Exactly.
No one sees your quads and hamstrings. Only you.
Exactly. Yeah. So now when I look at my physique, it's interesting. When I look at my physique now that I feel like I've balanced my upper body and my thighs out. Now that I look at my physique, I don't actually look at my things and think, oh, I need to work on my calves. I don't actually look at them anymore. Before, I think it looked more glaringly obvious because I had no thighs as well. Whereas
like
now
Johnny Bravo.
Now that my legs are filled out, which took ages to fill out, I don't really care about my calves. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I think that principle though, without taking it off a complete tangent, goes way beyond training though. And we were talking about this the other day, Owen. It's like
priorities.
Instead of it is that priority, but just like if you're not achieving something, just ask whether you really want to do it or not. Because it's not because the X, Y, Z reason. It's just because you aren't willing to put the effort. And I think that can be a really liberating thing. Because I've thought before I'd like to learn this language or I'd like to do that. I'd like to run a marathon. But like the idea is cool and great. But like when I actually think about like, I'm not willing to do what it takes to actually achieve that. So just like once you accept that, you're living in reality. You're not blaming, oh, I've got a kid, that's why I can't run a marathon. Like when everyone knows that's complete BS.
I remember when I did the half marathon and I was like, I didn't enjoy the prep for it, but I just thought I committed to it. I didn't actually enjoy the experience, but afterwards I was like, now I've got that out of my system. I don't need to do it again. I don't need to worry about trying to do a full marathon. Like that was it for me.
It's interesting with goals and priorities. And I think all of us now know enough to be like, well, if I don't want something enough, I'm not going to fucking do it. You know what I mean? Simple as that. But when we do want something, and when it's true to our core and we really want to chase it, we know we have the capacity to commit 100% to it and take all the nonsense that comes with it. I think I've heard Mark Manson talk about this. With any goal, if you're not willing to accept the sacrifices that you're going to have to make for it, then stop. Don't even bother, because you need to look at those things before you look at what benefit that goal is going to give you. Are you willing to sacrifice social situations? Are you willing to sacrifice time with loved ones? If you want to be like a millionaire or whatever it is, like, are you willing to accept all the negatives that come with that before you even start?
That's why discipline's a myth.
Agreed. And willpower and motivation. These are all made up buzzwords.
Yeah. On the calf thing, just the story I just came to my mind. I think it was like 2011. I was revisiting the Arnold Encyclopedia, And he obviously has a famous story about his calves, right? And when I started training, like Arnold is who I read a lot about. I really looked into his history, and he has the whole famous story of he cut his pants in half, and he exposed his calves everywhere he went. And for him, it was like he needs to win the Olympia, so that's why he had to get his calves bigger. And I still look at his calves before, and I think they look pretty damn good to me. But
I know.
Yeah. But one of the things he talked about in this book was like you walk on your tiptoes. You walk, and you're like, every step you take, you flex your calf. Do you understand what I'm saying? When you as you walk, you flex it. So I went through a period of doing that, and then I was went through a period of doing that, and I think that was like a good 1 month phase. And I think I went through that. I remember there was that year where I was trying everything, and got to the end of it, and I was like, this is just torture. Like, I'm just
giving yourself hip issues from walking so weirdly.
Yeah. But think of the cognitive drain that would be too.
Yeah,
you literally have to think about every step you take.
Yeah,
legit. There's a conscious thought going into that.
Yeah. And then it's just that calf thing's a big rabbit hole. We'll probably discuss it one day. But I think the key point here is, if we circle it back to the main focus of this podcast, is whilst on a very blanket statement, there does seem to be some preferences on what women train. The reality is whatever you want to train.
Yes.
I think that's a really good way to put it. Okay, cool. I think we covered training pretty well.
Just to build on that, just to one last point, sorry. For those movements, find big bang for your buck movements that train those muscles, whatever it is you want to focus on. So if it is your glutes, find muscles that are going to take your glutes through their full range of motion. Find exercises, that will take your glutes through their full range of motion with high loads, and just use good form and high levels of effort. Like if you're doing like hip hinge variations, where it's like an RDL or a deadlift, squatting variations, leg presses. These are they're hard movements, and they're going to be hard sets, but they're going to be ultimately what then builds your glutes more than, like we were going back to before, like these little frog pumps or like donkey kickbacks or whatever they're called. And it's whatever muscle group it is. If the exercise is hard, that's probably going to be creating more of a change in your body than like these fluffy pump ons.
Just on that, one thing we see often, men and women, is just on the subject of glutes, is spending ages like warming the glutes up, getting the glutes primed, activating them, and again, like you're wasting your time with a lot of that stuff. And again, this is something I've done in the past. So you spend like 15 minutes warming your glutes up, just trying to activate them, and then you're just spending all your energy just trying to. Because this is when I went through the phase of I need to build my glutes up, and I did build them up. But it ended up just being built up through heavy Bulgarian split squats, walking lunges, and RDLs. They were the ones that really did it for me. And it was when I stopped doing all the warm-up exercises for about 20 minutes, trying to feel them. The reality is we need to put some load through it over time.
Yeah. You take a Bulgarian split squat to failure, you're going to feel your glutes.
Your glutes are going to be doing something. Trust me, they're active.
Yeah.
They have to. Your hip has to flex and extend under load. It's happening. Trust me. You got to get out of that bottom position, and the only way to do that is to drive through the heel, get the glutes up, get the glutes involved, and the quads as well. So your body has to come up. I don't know what else it's using to come up.
Well, this is the thing. Like when you think about it that way, it's like, well, how else? When they say
how else are you standing up?
Yeah. How did you walk into the gym? Like you walked into the gym. Like if your glutes weren't working, you'd literally be crawling from the car or something, wouldn't you? Like,
yeah. No, the glute med wasn't stabilizing at, I don't know, 40, 50 degrees of flexion. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a big craze. Right. That was a big craze. I don't know if it's still going on. I'm assuming it is. But it was a massive thing.
It's heavy. It's heavy in rehab world because a lot of therapists are good at making their clients feel like they make them feel weak.
How many people come back from an injury and you say, what did the physio say? And they say, I just need to like activate my glutes more or something, or strengthen my glutes. It's like, I'm not saying it's never the case, but it's like, is that the cause of every single issue?
And then they make the correlation to be like, see, it fixed it. No, you just weren't lifting for a week. Like you just weren't training. You were resting the overused tissue for X amount of time, and it potentially just got better.
Yeah.
You could say if you just laid in bed and did nothing, or if you just walked, that I'd probably recommend just walking, not doing nothing. you'd probably get the same effect a week later. It's all load management.
Also, once you've had like a slight niggle or anything, or even pain, it often causes, especially if you're going to see the physio, it causes people to then pull things back and start again. So like maybe lower the load, reset form, and then build things back up. Because you kind of sometimes need something like that to then make you do it. So, you know, if they'd never had that niggle or pain, they'd probably just kept using crappy form and just kept trying to progress weight. But that reset could well also just been what was needed. You've tightened up your form, so now you're great to move forward again. And again, it's not because you've activated glute med, it's just because you're doing the Bulgarian split squat or whatever it is correctly now, yeah.
Speaking of injuries, is there any lifestyle considerations that we need to discuss with women in high heels? Something again that's been spoken about a lot around, especially when you wear high heels for a long period of time. Is there considerations for lower back, knees, ankles, or is it something again that's potentially being overblown?
To be fair, I haven't really looked much into that personally. From a mechanistic point of view, I would say there's definitely some rationale for that.
Yeah,
that's just me speaking. I've seen my mum wear heels her entire life. She's never really had any sort of issues or whatnot, but she doesn't move the best. but that could be just a combination of many things. But yeah, I can see there could be like a mechanistic, again, rationale for it, because we're not really designed to be walking in that position, especially like if you're not exposing your ankle to full ranges of motion frequently, then I can see that, you know, tight calves especially, and that also again leading to tighter hips, tighter lower back, all that sort of stuff. But to be fair, I have not seen enough data. I haven't looked into it as much as I probably could to make a good comment on that. But yeah,
I think it's the way it impacts it's the impacts on the kinetic chain, center of mass, and just creating issues, like you said, in the ankles and the forefoot.
Yeah, I think it can just create weaker joints. But again, if you're a woman who wears high heels throughout the day, but you train heavy at night and you load your skeleton and you train those other muscle groups and you don't wear high heels to bed, then I think you're pretty good. So if you balance the high heel wearing with no shoes wearing and all that stuff, I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think that if you're really investing in your performance and stuff like that, minimizing the amount of time you spend in high heels is a good idea, but it doesn't mean you can never wear them. And as long as when you are training, you're training all of those kind of muscles like ankles, knees, hips, all for a full range of motion, getting strong throughout those ranges of motion. So even if your ankles are more extended throughout the day because of that position, if you have done calf work and you're strong in all areas of like plantar and dorsiflexion, then you're going to be at a much lower risk of having any issues there. So again, I don't think it's ideal, but as long as you're strong in a range of positions, then you're going to minimize that negative effect for sure.
Strength fixes all.
I think that's training all covered. So should we dive into any potential nutritional differences between men and women? Again, I think that the core principles remain the same, but there are some differences that we could potentially explore when you're really pushing the limit.
I think the biggest thing here, in my opinion anyway, is similar to, is it really, I guess, more of a mindset thing, but it's similar to the training. Whereas if you shift the focus to performance, you can just unlock so much more potential. So I think it's that mindset around performance is so limiting. When it comes to nutrition with women, I think if you're fueling for performance as well, again, that can just unlock everything else. Just from social norms and what's put up, directed at us as we're growing up and things, eating salads, no carbs, all of these things, a lot of it is more and more directed towards women than men. And so I think that can be a mindset that can be really hard to get out of. But if you view yourself more as an athlete and, you're training for performance when you're in the kitchen, if you're then shift the focus from, dieting to fueling performance, again, everything else just kind of clicks into place and you're going to unleash your real potential there.
There's a massive psychological element here. Huge. I think it's definitely the biggest limiting factor for women is being afraid of food and being afraid of, okay, I can actually, firstly, I don't need to be in a calorie deficit forever. I can actually eat to feel good. I don't have to eat to restrict myself or eat to whatever the emotion may be. And that's the big psychological cycle that needs to be broken.
Yeah, I think you boys hit the nail on the head there. We can talk about ideal macro ratios, this and that, but fundamentally, a lot of reason why a lot of women don't make the same progress in the gym is not eating enough in general, perpetually dieting all the time, and you cannot expect to make any really good high level strength gains throughout your life, throughout your career, without eating enough food. And whether that comes from carbohydrates, again, also low amounts of protein as well. That's a huge one too, because as you said earlier, it's not ladylike to eat protein or eat meat or have a nice steak. It's have salads and keep the portions really, really small. And it's that sort of behavior that again leads to most of the time being malnourished, and most of the time being in a perpetual dieting, binging, restrict cycle. And I see we've worked with a lot of women that have that same viewpoint, and it's not until we've actually worked with them for a long time, given them obviously good nutritional advice to make sure they can make better choices as they progress throughout the journey. But a lot, like we've seen it on the application forms, like how many things have we seen where it's like been binge eating, tried this diet. It's always people who say they tried all these diets and they're still overweight, which is quite interesting, but that's a different topic altogether. But when it comes to strength gains, then a lot of the time it's that whole notion of not wanting to eat to not put on weight, when in fact, to get stronger and to put on muscle mass, you do actually have to put on weight. Doesn't mean you're getting fatter. It means you're getting better.
So long as done in control. We always speak about control is the key part and factor in being in shape for life. It's not being lean for life, it's being in shape for life. And being in shape for life comes with control. So if you're controllably increasing your body weight in a strategic manner, 0.5 to 1%, maybe 1.5% a month, whatever that number that you're comfortable with is, then you're going to get with it the performance gain. You're going to get with it the psychological rewiring that this is not doing me bad, that this is actually nourishing me, and this is actually making me feel better. This is making me perform better. And probably you're going to look better as well by default.
Yes. And we know like females respond to dieting a lot harder than males. The female physiology does fight back a lot harder. They have, again, there's a reproductive drive in a lot of in all females, right? Where that's why they need to have a certain level of body fat, because if they drop under that, they can't have a baby, they can't reproduce. And fundamentally, that is like their primitive role in society. Obviously that's a that's a blanket statement from an evolutionary point of view. Women have much more roles in today's society than just being a mum. But again, it's that sort of innate drive that it's just inbuilt, which is why dieting all the time, being malnourished, not having enough nutrition coming in is always going to lead to problems down the line. And we see this all the time, just malnourishment and hormonal issues and all these other things that come into play, because the female physiology just isn't as resilient to fat loss as a male physiology.
That's why do you think the physiology fights back more and more against women who abuse their bodies more and more through dieting? Because I've seen that a lot, that they have to really work hard afterwards to sort of override their physiology, especially if they've abused it over years and years. And that's why you have to play the long game with it, because it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
That's also whenever you start your next diet, your next transformation, whatever it is, it's not like you're just starting from day dot. Every day of your life is built to give you this starting position that you're then in. So if you have gone on these crash diets and you've done things badly, potentially you've lost a load of muscle as well. Like if you're coming in with less muscle, then you're going to be in a worse place to start off. I know we've said before, like no one's an expert on gut health or anything like that, but I'm sure if you do some of these kind of really bad practices out there, your gut's going to be in a worse position. You're more likely to then have digestive disruption, and all of these things. So it's all of these things that you do in your life are going to then put you where you are now. It's not like, I'm starting my new diet, so on day one. It's like, well, if 2 months ago you did a crash diet and you didn't do any resistance training, you dropped a load of muscle, well, you're now going to be in a worse position to then not only look better, but to drop body fat than you were, previously. And so I think that's where it can also have play into things as well. But I also think it's worth noting that although women bodies may like fight back, as we kind of say, more. It doesn't mean that a calorie deficit isn't still a calorie deficit. And so if you are in a fat loss phase and things are stalling, it's not because, oh, I can't lose any more body fat because my body's fighting back. It's either the plan's not set up right for you or you're not adhering to the plan. Those principles still apply.
Correct. Yeah. Good disclaimer there, Ed.
Yeah, there's evolution and there's
delusion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. I think nutritionally, it's a psychological. If you can break the psychology down, you can really thrive, and that's where you can maximize the physiology of the training that we've just discussed.
Yes, eat like an athlete, be an athlete.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to look like a bulky athlete, it's just a quote, right? If you treat yourself like an athlete, then you will eat accordingly like an athlete, and you'll train like an athlete, and you'll try to live your life like someone who cares for their body. That's the way I see it. And
that's true for guys as well. I know when I did like the first photo shoot I did, consolidated really badly, like didn't consolidate basically. And I was just trying to hack the scales every day, and I was trying to like distribute calories in a different way, train a certain way, just to try and like be able to eat as much shit as possible, but then also look, just still look okay. And it went on for months, and it was just like this bad cycle. And it was only once I just stopped really being as focused about what I looked like in the mirror and the scale as much, still kept tabs on them, but got really excited about my training again. And that then made me want to eat better and more in line with my sessions, not just calories throughout the week, but make sure I was fueling the sessions, etc., etc. And then all of the lifestyle stuff falls into play as well, because you don't want to be going out drinking all the time, because you're then going to be hungover for your session. You want to get to bed on time, sleeping. Like we talked about this a million times before, but that focus on performance is what got me out of that hole. And then really, I used that love of training to spark everything else. So it's men and women as well. But if you can get that, start viewing yourself as an athlete and get excited about your performance, especially for women, I think that's the biggest game changer.
Yeah, and if that athletic endeavor isn't weight training, that's okay as well. Just find whatever that athletic endeavor is, whether it's running, it could be a specific type of martial arts, it could be boxing, it could be gymnastics, whatever it is, whatever that is, just treat that sport, that activity as an athlete.
Because you have to bring your best self to those things. Yeah. Because they also require focus, attention, discipline, all those things. And you don't want to go in there with poor sleep or poor diet, poor digestion. You want to go there ready to smash it. I think, Ed, you hit the nail on the head there. And I think this is going to ring true for many people listening, is when you made that decision to be an athlete and focus on your performance, all those other decisions automatically got made for you. You didn't have to consciously think, I should go to bed, but Netflix is on, or I do want that ice cream. All those decisions are just, no, they're not even there to be made. It's just, no, I'm going to bed because I need to train in the morning. Period. And it's an amazing feeling. Yes. You don't have to worry about flexing your calf with every step, because calves are just not on the agenda.
I'm a bodybuilder who doesn't train calves. That's what you can say. It's funny, like when I competed in 2017, I didn't feel self-conscious about my calves that time. I just went on stage and did it. Whereas
everything else is dialed in.
2014, I was looking at my calves more than anything. It's funny enough, when I had that experience as well with consolidation, it took me, or lack of, it was performance that got me out of it as well in 2015. So
massively,
it's the way forward.
And it's a way forward for longevity too. Think about how long your aesthetics can last. Be realistic.
They're going to get worse, aren't they?
Yeah, we're all getting older. We're all going to eventually disintegrate into nothing. You may as well have some sort of performance outcome that you can still be making progression on.
Yeah. Or just one you enjoy.
Yes, correct. Exactly.
Because that progression may or may not come.
That is true.
I think that's a wrap on all things women. There is the topic of a menstrual cycle, but I think that's probably a separate podcast in itself if we tackle that subject. But yeah, key take-home points are train like an athlete, or train. It's key take-home point, singular.